Hey guys, my name is David Swor. I'm here with DJ Cox, and we decided to start a podcast. The only problem is we don't know how to do one. So we decided to do a Zoom conference or whatever, and we're going to talk some baseball. So me and DJ, we go way back to college baseball days, and we decided to name our podcast Frenemies. And if you know me and DJ, you know why. It's because all we ever do is argue. Am I right, DJ?
That's correct, David. Good to see you, buddy. Thanks for being the host tonight. Um, like you said, we go way back to 1999 when you walked on campus of Tennessee Temple University as a college baseball player. And quick little story about David. The first time I met you, um, I walked up to you and I said, "Hey, David, nice to meet you, man. I'm good to see another Cubs fan around here." Well, what was the story behind that, David?
Yeah, so that summer, the summer before, I played for an American Legion team, and we were the Charleston Hawks. And unfortunately, they made us wear a knockoff Cubs hat. And so DJ thought I was this huge Cubs fan, when in fact I was a Charleston Hawk. So anyway, I did, growing up, I don't want to say I was a fan, but, in West Virginia, you had two options, TBS, which was the Braves, and WGN, which was the Cubs. And, of course, you guys are an hour behind us. And so, you get out of school, Cubs a lot of day games. So I did watch a lot of Cubs baseball growing up, but not a Cubs fan. So can't win them all. But we decided we were going to try. We're huge baseball fans, and we're going to try to review somehow all 30 teams. So we may have until next year to do this because we may not have baseball. So who knows? But we figured it'd be a fun thing to try to do. So the first team that we're going to review is DJ's favorite team, and that is the Cubs. So DJ, tell us a little bit about last year and the off season.
All right, so little recap of last year. If you were a Cubs fan, it was a highly disappointing season for us. Third place finish behind the Cardinals and the Brewers in the division. Not even close, really, to a playoff team. Struggled a lot in the division with the Pirates and the Reds, and that was a big problem with the season we had last year. When you're losing to those two teams, you're going to have a long year, and they barely finished above 500. It was a very disappointing season. Unfortunately, Joe Madden had to go because of it, which I still don't agree with. But, I love Rossi, and we'll see what he's going to do with the team this year in the ball club, and they're looking to move forward with him, and so it's going to be definitely a different team and a new look, and I'm excited about it. So hopefully it's going to turn out well this year.
So in your opinion, what happened? I mean, the Cubs were a super hyped team just a couple years from winning a World Series. A lot of those guys back, homegrown guys. So what happened?
Well, when you look back on it a little bit, the bullpen was awful. It was atrocious. There's no going around that. I think another problem was, Joe Madden might have used some guys in different positions that they weren't really used to moving into, and throwing guys around a little bit more than he should have. I'm a fan of that, but to an extent. Maybe he did a little too much of that. But honestly, it just guys you expected to play really well kind of had down years, and we just really struggled. And the bullpen, I think, was terrible. We signed Kimbrel. He was an absolute disaster last year. We lost a lot of games when he was on the mound, which is pretty hard to believe. It was really hard to deal with and hard to see with that much talent how you can fall flat on their faces, and just definitely looking forward to a new start, and with a lot of talent. They should be fine this year.
So I'm going to have to admit, I didn't really follow a lot of other teams last year. And so when I went back and researched for this, again, I hate to admit I was shocked at how talented the Cubs really were, and shocked at how bad they underachieved Do you think they did anything? I'm gonna jump some questions here. We went over the order of the questions, so I'm gonna jump a question right here. What do you think they did in the offseason that might have helped fix, the problems from last year?
Well, to be honest with you, they didn't do very much.
That's right.
They really didn't. They had more subtractions than they did additions, and it's a little scary when you look at that from that perspective of it. I mean, when Jeremy Jeffress and Steven Suiza Jr. and Jason Kipnis are your top additions, that's not really anything to get super excited about. So,
Souza hasn't played in like 2 years. I mean, wow.
Hey, he'll get some spot starts here and there. That's what I'm saying. It's like, how do you get excited about Steven Suiza? I mean, yeah, he's had a decent career and everything, but you're joining the Chicago Cubs, man. You better be a really great ball player because this team's ready to take this step to the next level. And an addition like that, and if Jeremy Jeffress pitches like he did in 2018, he'll be lights out. But last year, absolutely awful. I mean, he was terrible. And when you go from being an all-star to being a flub just like that, I don't know how that happens, but it did for him, and hopefully he can rebound this year.
Yeah. Just I'm gonna throw in a comment on that. I don't understand Theo Epstein. You know how I felt about that for a long time. I think he almost outthinks himself at times. And, of course, I realize he's got ownership to deal with budgets and all that kind of thing. But you would think, the Cubs are kind of at their very peak and maybe on the downside of the peak. And so, this might be the last year that they could have a chance to win the whole thing. And so, why wouldn't you go for it? Your division's really not that strong, although there's a couple new players there this year. I totally do not understand just kind of sitting on your hands. And obviously they felt like Joe Madden was the problem, one of the greatest managers in the last 10 years. But, you can only manage what you have. And if your $20 million a year closer comes in and blows every save, what can you really do? And so I was pretty shocked. Again, after looking through it, that team has some studs on it. And a couple of those guys are either free agents this winter or next. And it just seemed like a bad time to kind of be like, oh, we're just gonna hold our ground here. So I don't understand that. I think Theo Epstein is great at rebuilding teams. I don't think he knows what to do once they're there to keep it going. And you got to hand it to Brian Cashman. And I know they've had unlimited money. I understand that argument, but they've basically been relevant since the mid-90s. All the way through. There's been very few years they weren't competing for divisions, and it's because, Cashman knows what strings to pull and win. And again, I know Theo's won some championships. He's not been very good at keeping that going over a long period of time. So that's my beef with him. But got a few questions here to ask you. We talked. Who do you think is the key addition? Who do you think is going to add the most from the offseason?
Well, that's tough because of the guys I just mentioned. I'm not very excited about any of them. To be honest with you, I think the guy out of those three that has the best chance of making an impact is Jason Kipnis. Jason Kipnis is a local guy here. He went to Glenbrook North High School. So he's coming back home, which is, I'm sure, awesome for him. Just in 2016, he was a great second baseman for the Indians who, played us in the World Series that year. So he's not too far out from being a really good ball player. And, he's got a shot at playing. He's one of the guys that could fill that second base void, which is one of the problems with us. We got 400 guys going for second base this year. And if he's the guy that can take it, and run with it, then, he's a left-handed bat, so he can face all those righty guys. And I'm hoping he's the guy because I'm not really, excited about the other two. And, I guess out of players, that's going to be, the guy that I'm going to go with is Kipnis.
Yeah, I could definitely understand that. I guess I would say key addition could be Jeffress. They definitely have to have him. I looked at that bullpen list. I don't know any of those guys outside of Kimbrell, who probably was going to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
until whatever happened to him last year. I don't know what happened to him last year. Maybe he'll find it, but it's not very inspiring. Let's just say that. All right, who do you think was a key loss? Who's somebody that the Cubs lost that's really going to hurt them?
Okay, so out of all the guys that we lost, Nick Castellanos, I believe, is the guy. Man, did he rake when he was here? Doubles machine. Just fit in really well. I think that one of the things we're not really sure of right now is if they're going to use a DH in the National League this year with all the things that are switching over. It's possible. And if they do, and we still had Castellanos in right field, oh man, your options in your team just got a whole lot deeper because you can put Schwarber at DH and he can just live there. We don't have to put him in the field at all. And then you give another guy in the outfield to step up and have a huge opportunity there. So I think of all the guys that they lost, he's the biggest one. Obviously losing Zobrist was tough. But he's the 2016 World Series MVP. But he's a little older now, and I think he should go home and work on his family situation and everything. So it's kind of good for him to leave. Addison Russell, tough situation. Had a bad offseason, got in a lot of trouble. Doesn't even have a team right now. Mike Montgomery, the guy on the mound when we won the World Series, he's gone now too. And Pedro Strop, who is another guy that was a key contributor in that bullpen, is gone, and the Reds got him as well. And we lost a lot of guys, and it's tough. But I think Castellanos is going to hurt the worst.
Yeah, it especially hurts because of where he went. So now he's going to be in that Reds lineup, and going back to the DH situation, man, the Reds are perfect for it. They got guys without positions that can rake and an extra position. That's really going to give the Reds a huge advantage. So I agree with you on Castellanos. What do you think is the Cubs' biggest strength?
Well, I'm pretty sure you're going to agree with this. Their lineup. Man, anytime you can go through a lineup, Bryant's going to lead off this year. Ross has already made that clear from the beginning. He's going to go with him to start, which, whatever, that's fine. I don't really their strategy to where you hit people, but, we got to have a leadoff guy, and hopefully he gets on base a ton. But when you got Schwarber, Contreras, Baez, Bryant, Rizzo, you just loaded with, Hayward will be, he'll be up and down. But that lineup is nasty. And I know you're a pitcher, and I don't think you'd be very happy having to face that lineup every day on the mound. And by far their strength, if you ask me, is their lineup, just absolutely loaded with talent.
Yep, I totally agree with that. Again, being just a casual fan, I didn't realize how good that lineup was last year, especially with Castellanos in it. Wow, I just couldn't believe it. So what do you think the biggest weakness is?
Well, I think you already mentioned it, the bullpen. When you're when you got Rowan Wick in the bullpen, and he's the only guy you trust at the end of the year, that's saying something. Because I don't know, have you ever even heard of Rowan Wick, David?
Never heard of him.
Well, there's my point. The guy had a 2.43 ERA last year. He was awesome. Okay, I'll give it to him, no doubt.
Yep.
But if that's your guy, you're in trouble. Because he's not that great. He might have just had 1 year where he dominated, and we don't know if he's even going to be good this year or not. I got a lot of questions with that bullpen. Like you said, you already mentioned Kimbrel. I think there's a reason why you brought in Chris Sale to win the World Series. You left Kimbrel hanging. The Red Sox knew, he wasn't the guy anymore. He came to us, and the one thing I'm kind of hoping on in that is he got a late start last year. He started in June. Maybe he needs to go through. But with this skip, and this is a year unlike any other, and I don't see how this offseason is going to be any better for him than the last one was. So, like you said, Jeremy Jeffress hopefully can pull it off for us this year, and Kimbrel's going to be the closer. It's already been mentioned. So, he had a 6.53 ERA last year, which I still can't believe. It's just awful. Just a terrible, disappointing season for him. And then a bunch of no-namers, really. Unless you're a Cubs fan and you follow these guys every single day, I'm sure a lot of Cubs fans don't even know a lot of these guys down in the bullpen, and it scares me. I'm not going to lie to you.
Well, what's really scary about that weakness, and I'm going to kind of jump, I was going to make this point later, but, with the season the way it's going to be, starters aren't going to be stretched out. And so I think the team with the deeper bullpen is going to be the team that wins. And it's just a shame that the Cubs with that lineup are going to be so shorthanded on the pitching end because, like I said, those guys won't be able to go 7 innings right off the bat. So you're going to be dependent on that bullpen to pitch half the game, probably. So it's just really unfortunate. Who do you think the Cubs have in the farm system that can help right away?
Okay, so going along those points there you just mentioned, one of the guys we've been looking at for a while now, a couple of years he's been pitching on and off for us, is Alec Mills. Alec, it could be one of those guys that sneaks in and grabs a fifth starter spot. And one of the keys to that is that moves Chatwood back to the bullpen, which Tyler Chatwood, he's a guy that I like having in the bullpen because he can come in and pitch 5 innings for you one day if you need him. He can come in and pitch 1 inning for you if you need him. He was one of the guys out of the bullpen last year that really did a good job of doing that. So that affects everything. If you can get a guy like him to step in there, he's a prospect. He's over 1K per inning guy, so he strikes out a lot of people. I haven't seen enough of him to know exactly how good he's going to be, but sky's the limit for him.
Yeah.
One of the other guys that we're really looking at right now, the Cubs almost traded Contreras this offseason. I was kind of shocked by that, because Contreras obviously is a really good catcher. You got Victor Caratini backing him up, and then you got Miguel Amaya, who is in our minor league system here. He's the guy that makes Contreras a little expendable. He's a very good catcher, big prospect, number 4 overall for the Cubs. A lot of people think he's number 1. But I'll tell you what, with the way that this season could go, and the rosters are going to expand a little bit, I think, and if they do, I believe he's going to be up. The Cubs like to use 3 catchers, and if they have those 3 as the catchers, David, I'm not sure you can find a 1-2-3 punch from the catcher position better than the Cubs have, and they will be absolutely loaded with talent at the catcher position if he comes up. And those are the 2 guys I'm really looking at to hopefully help from the farm this year and give us a little boost.
What can you tell us about Nico Horner?
Nico, good one. Nico is a guy that came up last year and played really well at the end of the season for us. Nico's a Stanford guy, so he's a little smart. He transfers over to the baseball field. He's one of those guys in the mix at second base.
There's like 8 of them.
There's a lot. That's one of the things I'm not sure they're going to do with. They're not going to do it with Nico. And so I guess from a perspective of the depth of this team, offensively is pretty good. There's no doubt about that. They've got a lot of guys that can come in and play and win some position battles. And like I was going back to earlier, their offense is just loaded. And even guys that might not even play would be starting on different teams. So it's definitely – that's another guy that a lot of people forget about, David, is Nico. And he was a second baseman. He played a little shortstop even, too, for the Cubs the end of the year last year. We're excited about him, no doubt. And hopefully I'm kind of rooting for him, to be honest with you. I really hope he's a young guy that can fill that void at second and stick with it for a long time.
What's the deal with Ian Happ? So I went back and looked at some stats. I honestly didn't realize he had as good a year as he did, I guess, towards the end of the year. So what are they going to do with him?
Well, Ian Happ's a different case. A lot of guys were calling for Happ to get more playing time. That's what we were talking about with Madden and using certain guys, not using certain guys. And to his defense, it's got to be a little tough when you got so many good guys that stick in the lineup every day to play. Some of those guys are just gonna lose it a little bit and not get as much time as they want. Happ is in battle for center field. We're seeing if he can. Albert Almora's out there, and Albert Almora is probably one of the better defenders we've got. But Ian Happ is a really good ball player too, and if he can play multiple positions, which makes him really good too. He can play second, he can play third, center field, right field, left field. He's that little guy that you can have run around to every position and fill a void that you need. he's a wild card too. He could be a starter on this team. He really could. He's one of those guys that could end up taking his spot. And he had some really good stats last year, like we were saying. So maybe we'll get something out of Ian this year.
Yep. So tell us about that second base position battle. So they got is it Boat? Is that how you say his last name?
Bodie.
And Bodie and Nico Horner. You got Ian Happ. You got his name just slipped me. The second baseman from Cleveland.
Casey Kipnis.
Kipnis. Yep. You got Daniel Descalso, if I'm not mistaken, is in that mix. For those of you who don't know, I don't have internet. I don't have power. So I'm shooting from the hip, just 100% shooting from the hip here. So forgive me if I butcher names and stats and positions. Yeah, I'm just honestly making this up as I go a little bit, but that's a lot of names for one position. You can't keep them all. You can't play them all. So how's that going to play out?
Okay, and you forgot Robel Garcia, who came up and played a little bit too at second base for us last year. So like you said, there's a ton of guys going for that spot. I have absolutely no idea why Daniel Descalso's on this team. I'm just going to be brutally honest with you.
Maybe he can pitch.
Maybe, he did a little bit last year, if I'm not mistaken. I think he pitched a little bit. We had a couple position guys pitch last year. I think he threw it out there for a little bit. He probably had an 18 ERA. It was terrible. But, no, I don't have a clue why he would make the 25-man roster. He has no use on this team whatsoever, especially a team like this that's as talented as it is. So I really, to be honest with you, he's a good guy and everything, but honestly, he doesn't deserve a spot on this team. Hopefully he doesn't make the team, just to be honest with you. And these some of these younger guys, and David Bodie's another guy we haven't talked about very much too. He's another guy that play a little third. He's another guy that could make a possibility of him playing some third base if he becomes a starter, and we can put Brian out in left or something like that too. And when you can put Chris Bryant out in the outfield, because just being honest with you, Chris Bryant is not the best third baseman defensively. That's for sure. Makes a lot of errors over there. So if you stick him in a corner, it makes your outfield a little better. And but the problem with that is you got to have somebody to step into third to hit. He got to hit really good. So for that to work. So hopefully that he'll do that this year.
Yep. What's the Cubs' best case scenario this year?
Okay, so honestly, the best case scenario is winning the division. And speaking from my brain and not my heart, making the playoffs is probably as far as this team's going to go. You made a really good point few minutes ago about the bullpen. Just don't see it right now with that, and that worries me a ton. I'm a little worried about the starting pitching. So from those perspectives, it's going to be tough. Nobody's going to touch the Dodgers. So when you got those guys in the National League, that's really tough. Yeah. But honestly, they can win this division. They've got the talent to do it. Not very many teams in this division scare me besides the Reds. So they've got a real good shot at doing it.
Yeah, I kind of, and we'll have to cover this later, but I don't get the Brewers' love. I just don't get it. I went back and looked at their pitching and all that. I don't get it. But of course they do have a strong bullpen. And so I guess in this situation where starters aren't going to go as long, maybe they can be more competitive that way, because they got a pretty good lineup as well. A lot of good young guys. But yeah, I kind of see it the same way. I think the Cubs will be in the conversation for the division. Just being candid, I don't think they're as good as the Reds. I went back and looked at their situation as well. Some of the Cubs' better starters are getting a little long in the tooth. I loved Lester, and Darvish started looking like himself again last year. But Hendricks is now in his low 30s, and I like him real well. He's a great pitcher. But they're just not very deep in the pitching area. There's really nobody behind them that I could see in the minors, just a little bit that I researched that looks like that they could contribute this year. And so I honestly, if I was a Cubs fan, I would be really mad because, like I said, you got some stud players in that lineup, potential Hall of Famers, guys that are on that track. and they're winding down their contracts, and they just honestly kind of chose not to compete. I don't know how else to say it. There shouldn't have been anything in that bullpen that gave them any hope that it's going to be any better, and they basically didn't do anything, to fix it. So what do you think the worst case scenario is?
Well, the worst case scenario is missing the playoffs again, to be honest with you. Second place in the division, not getting the wild card. They're even third place. Last year was just awful, getting third place in the division. Just, I honestly think with this team, there's nowhere to go but up. But if you finish second in the division and miss out on the wild card, that's about as low as you can go because you're that close and you didn't get there. Yeah. This team's going to win. They're going to be above 500, no doubt. So they're going to be in a playoff mix. But they could possibly miss it. They really could. They've got some weaknesses that could, have them fall a little bit short. And I think that's the worst case scenario because this team's not going to finish last or fourth or, not even third, really, to be honest with you. But I think the worst case scenario is just missing the playoffs, and that would drive us all absolutely insane if they did that. So.
Let me throw out this worst case scenario. It's a scenario that as a Yankee fan, I'm worried about too. So what if those stars decide not to play?
Ooh.
There's no depth there. It would be a pretty big bummer. And I haven't, again, followed the Cubs enough to know what their players are saying at this point. There's the whole battle between the union and the owners. But man, it would be really terrible. If Chris Bryant doesn't play and just decides, hey, I'm just as valuable this offseason either way. Or Javi Baez, if he just says, yeah, it's just not worth it to me. The Cubs would be in really bad shape, especially on the pitching and maybe not so much on the lineup end. But on the pitching end, if John Lester decided he wasn't going to play, I mean, who are you going to replace him with? And so, in my opinion, that would be the worst case scenario is if some of their stars decide not to play. I think otherwise, like we've discussed, I think they're going to be pretty competitive. I think they have enough of a lineup that they'll stick around. I think they have a chance to win the division. I think the Reds should be the odds-on favorite for that at this point. But, injury could happen. Anything could happen. And the Cubs could be right there. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit from this year. Who is your all-time favorite? And I can't wait to hear this. All-time favorite Cubs player. I think I know where you're going with this, by the way.
You might. I'm kind of curious if you do. This is a tough one for me. I'm not going to lie to you. Of all the teams, obviously, I could probably go in about 27 different directions here if I wanted to. 27, that's your number, right? So
that's right.
I could probably go in that many directions as far as picking a guy that's been my favorite. Let me ask you this: can I go in two different directions on this, like childhood guy and then kind of now guy, or do you want just my guy?
Yeah.
Period.
No, you could go that direction.
Okay, I'll only do this for the Cubs because this is kind of that kind of scenario for me. So, on the other teams, I'll pick one guy. But so growing up, it's got to be Ryan Sandberg. That guy just, he was the heart and soul of the team. One of the good things about, I guess not a good thing, but one of the things about baseball right now is I got the Cubs network and Marquee Network, which is a lot like the Yes Network for the Yankees, and we got that just this year. So now you're being able to see some old games and going back to 1989 teams and watching some of those games, and just really cool to go back and watch some of those old games, relive the childhood memories and everything. But Mark Grace, Andre Dawson, Ryan Sandberg, those are the guys. It's got to be Rhino for me. Shifting gears to a little more current, Reed Johnson.
I knew
it. Reed Johnson, man. You know me, I'm a center fielder. I just love the way he plays the game. Not a superstar by any means, but man, did he play the game the right way. he's a big contributor to the 2008 team that we had that won the division, made the playoffs, had a pretty quick exit, but still just always had a thing for Reed Johnson. Over there hanging is 2 autographed pictures of Reed Johnson over there, one on the 400-foot sign at Wrigley Field, and then one of him swinging a bat. So he's in the man cave. Ryan Sandberg's in here about 2 or 3 times with signed autographed bat and baseball card. So I got to go with those 2. So now I got to ask you, David, who is your favorite Cub all time?
This is going to surprise you. So obviously, I grew up, like I said, coming home from school, watching those day games on WGN. So I loved all those guys you named: Mark Grace, Ryan Sandberg, Sean Dunston, Andre Dawson, Greg Maddux back in the day when he played for him. But my favorite player for the Cubs, as much as I've made fun of him over the years, I really love to watch Kerry Wood pitch.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, man, I was on the edge of my seat for the 20 strikeout game. I got to rewatch that the other day on MLB. I remember every bit of that. I think I tuned in late to that game. Maybe I don't remember even the time of the day or whatever, but I think I just tuned in for the last few innings. But I remember, tuning in for that, and what a killer curveball he had. And of course, back then nobody threw 100, but he did, and so he was like the Justin Verlander of his day. And if you'll remember, he kind of made a comeback with the Yankees as a reliever later down the line, and he kind of had the old stuff back, but it was just in short spurts. So that would probably be my favorite Cubs player. But there's a lot of guys could be on that list. Like I said, I love that old team with Mark Grace and those guys. I definitely remember the Topps Mark Grace rookie card that a guy at a card show ripped me out of later. I think he offered me like Steve Sachs for it or something, and I traded it. So, but anyway, I actually have a lot of good memories watching Harry Carey on and the Cubs on WGN. So I really wish baseball would get back to that. By the way, that's a rant I'd like to go on another time. But right now, with all this Corona going on, I wish baseball would figure out a way to make it more accessible for fans to watch again, because TBS and WGN made a lot of fans for those teams because that's all you had to watch in a lot of markets. So that's just a soapbox we can get on another time. But
I got you, man. So I got to add to this a little bit, okay? To me, by far, the Kerry Wood game has a lot of specialty to me as well, and you'll like this story too, because it has a lot to do with our lives, actually. So that game that Kerry Wood pitched, I was a lot like you. I came home from school and turned it on and could not believe what I was seeing. To me, that's the greatest game ever pitched. I've seen a lot of games over the years, and a lot of them are really good, but just the way he dominated that day, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. Jim Hall, who was at Tennessee Temple assistant coach, I'm not sure he was there when you got there. He might have been Skinny. Yes, you do know Skinny.
Yeah.
So I was on the phone with Skinny while Kerry Wood was pitching that game, and he offered me the opportunity to go there and play ball there. So while I was watching that game, so it's a memory that'll stick with me forever. That day I committed to play ball down at Tennessee Temple, and I was watching Kerry Wood strike out 20 batters at the same time. So it always holds a sentimental place in my heart for me as far as that goes. And yeah, great. You shocked me with that one. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Well, I have for years made fun of DJ and Mark Pryor and Carlos Zambrano, and I would always throw Kerry Wood in there, but it kind of hurt my feelings because I actually was a fan. So that was I knew that was going to be dropping a bomb on you.
It finally comes out. I knew it.
And let me tell you, and you're going to hate this, but I wasn't a Sammy Sosa fan, but that season when he and Mark McGwire were going for that home run record was magical for me, and I always respected it. I think Sammy Sosa should be in the Hall of Fame, if only for that season. Because it was so magical. It brought back baseball. Those at bats were can't miss. I didn't care when they interrupted games to see those guys do that. But that was a special cork bat or steroids or not. That was a special year, and I enjoyed watching all those home runs that year.
Okay.
I was a huge Mark McGwire fan too, by the way. So I was glad that he came out on top.
Did you happen to know that Sunday night ESPN's doing that documentary on them too, 1998 season with Sosa and McGwire? So tune in Sunday night at ESPN. They're going to be doing the special. I think it's at 8 o'clock Central Time, so it might be 9 o'clock your time. Take a look, and it's a 2-hour special on that, and you'll love that if that's something that you cherish in your childhood. So you got to tune into that one.
Yeah. All right, so you got me some Cubs trivia?
I do, buddy. All right, I'm gonna get it out here for you. We'll see how good you do. I'm gonna
do terrible.
I don't think you'll do as bad as you think. All right, I'm gonna give you 1 minute. Okay, I'm gonna time it, so I'll get this on the clock here. Because this is accumulation question here. You gotta get as many as you can. All right, so my question to you, and I'm going to give you 5 seconds to think about it, and I'm going to put you on the clock. All right?
Okay.
So you got 24 players that have hit over 100 home runs in a Cubs uniform. There's 24 of them. Okay? So
I'm never going to get this.
You got 1 minute to give me you don't have to get them all. I don't think I can get them all. But if you can give me let's see how many you can give me out of the 24 in 1 minute. All right, go.
Ryan Sandberg, Andre Dawson, Mark Grace. I'm going to bet Sean Dunston was there long enough. Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, Javi Baez. Did I say Sammy Sosa already?
You
Sammy Sosa. Ernie Banks. Shoot, I can't think of that guy's name. I cannot think of that guy's name. Hesop Choi. No, I'm just kidding. I can't think of that guy's name. It's going to bother me.
You got 20 seconds. You're doing good.
Oh boy. Oh, Moises Alou. Is he on that list?
He's not.
Boo. Let's see here. I told you I was going to do terrible. I was going to run out of steam.
2, 1, time. All right. That was a minute. You didn't do bad. All right, I'll give you 7, 8. Did you say Sandberg? You said Sandberg, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you had 9.
So there is a third baseman I'm missing in there.
Aramis Ramirez?
Aramis Ramirez. I knew it. I just couldn't come up with it. And there's a first baseman I feel like I'm missing in there as well from like the Mark Grace would have been there in the 90s, maybe early 2000s.
Derek Lee.
Who is it? Derek Lee. Yes. Terrible, man. That's terrible. Who else am I missing?
That's not too bad. So you got Billy Williams.
Okay.
Ron Santo.
Oh, that's terrible. That's terrible. I missed that one.
Gabby Hartnett, Bill Nicholson, and Hank Sauer. Those are tough.
Never heard of them.
Hack Wilson, who was a single-season RBI leader with 191 RBI.
I wasn't a fan in the 40s.
Alfonso Soriano is one you missed.
Yeah, I should have known that one.
Leon Durham, Andy Pafko. Oh, Jody Davis. Kyle Schwarber is on there.
Boo.
Rick Monday and Keith Moreland. So you didn't do too bad, man.
I can't believe Jody Davis is on that list.
Jody Davis.
I remember having his 1987 Topps card or whatever that was. I remember that. I didn't realize he played for them long enough to get 100 homers.
Was the 87 Topps the first cards you collected?
Well, that was pretty close to it, probably, honestly. Yeah.
Mine was 86, so I'm pretty sure you're close to that.
Yeah, 87. I remember when the 88 Don Russ came out, the red and black speckled ones.
Oh, yeah.
I thought those were the coolest thing ever. And then I remember in 88 or 89 when Upper Deck came out. You remember that? That was like the Cadillac of cards back in the day. So, anyway, I was a huge collector at one point. Not so much anymore. But
all right, David. So I got to ask you, Have you ever been to Wrigley Field?
Never been to Wrigley Field. That's one I've told Allison plenty of times that we needed to make happen. I need to get up there and see it. That is on, if I had to pick a place to go, that would be very high on the list just because of all the history. I like the historic parks. We were blessed to play in a historic park.
Yes, we were.
I think a lot of guys took that for granted, but I never did. And so I would love to go to Wrigley. I honestly would love to go to Fenway, although I would hate watching that game there, unless they were playing the Yankees won, but I would love to go to Fenway just because of the history. I was blessed to go to Old Yankee Stadium. We can talk about that next time. That was a cool one I went to, but I actually haven't been to a lot of the parks. So tell us about Wrigley.
Okay, so obviously this is the mecca of baseball world to me, the fields. My favorite spot, I'm sure you already know, no surprise here, but the 400-foot sign in center field, there's a spot in the bleachers. Bleachers are general admission, so you get there early, you get to sit where you want. I'll literally run and throw my stuff in the front row right by the 400 sign and watch from the center field view. My favorite place to be in the ballpark. I must have gone to probably 700 games in high school. Not gonna lie to you. Sat in the bleachers, and
Wow,
it's just to me the best experience. I miss it right now. I think it's the best stadium that there is. I've been to a lot of them. Obviously, sentimental will lean towards that. But David, I guess what I'm getting at is, I don't know, man. We've been friends all these years, and I cannot believe you haven't came and visited and gone to Wrigley with me. So that's something we gotta definitely do soon, bud.
definitely gotta do it. Definitely gotta do it. I got a trivia question for you. This is a pretty crappy trivia questions as trivia questions go. Name the movie star who played first base for the Cubs.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, I did not know this until I did a little bit of research. Pretty cool.
The movie star who played first base for the Cubs. Really?
Yeah, now, this is going back a ways, long time, but back in the day, I'll spoil it because I can tell you don't know. I'm surprised actually. So did you ever watch The Rifleman back in the day? The old Western, The Rifleman.
Chuck Connors?
Chuck Connors played first base for the Cubs.
What?
Like 60 some games 100 years ago.
Really?
So, yeah, I didn't know that either. I was looking through a trivia book that I had, and sure enough, Chuck Connors was a baseball player. I had no idea.
You know what? I had heard he was a baseball player, but I never would have guessed for the Cubs. So you got me on that one. That's a good one, David. That's a real good one.
Right out of the Chicago Tribune, actually.
Nice. You should read that more often.
I've learned a lot. It's been real interesting getting to research another team a little bit. How do you feel about how Theo's left the farm system, by the way?
It's toast.
Oh yeah.
There's not much there.
8 of their top 10 players, 8 of the top 10, according to, I think, Baseball America, I think is who I looked at, are in single A or below.
Really?
Which means they ain't helping anytime soon. And I know they went through a spell there where they were winning a World Series and traded off some guys, and I totally respect that. But kind of shocking, actually, that it would be that bad. So anyway, it's going to be, if they have to tear that team down, it's going to be a while.
Yeah, you're right about that. That's the problem with when you do that and you got a team that you're putting places in to win and you're winning. I have no problem doing that. Giving up the farm to win the World Series is to me what you're supposed to do. But like you said,
Sure.
if you get to that point where your team's starting to fall apart and your prospects are gone, you're in a bad spot. And like you said, that's somewhere they could be if these guys, a lot of them are up for free agency soon. A lot of them want a lot of money. Baez and Bryant and Rizzo are all wanting the money. They're not going to be able to pay all of them. So we're in a little bit of trouble if you look at it from that perspective. But some of the deals he does, I don't blame him for. We got Chapman for Gleyber Torres, which Gleyber Torres may be a Hall of Famer when it's all said and done. That guy's a stud. Sure, you love having him because you got Chapman back too, and you didn't need him that year, so it completely win for you guys. But Chapman helped us win a World Series, so makes sense to me. But things like that we had to do to win a World Series and to put pieces there, there's a price to pay, and we've paid a pretty bad price. And along those lines, the draft is tonight, and I just want to kind of mention this a little bit. Ed Howard was the pick of the Cubs, first-round pick. It's kind of cool because Ed Howard goes to Mount Carmel High School, which is on the south side of Chicago. So local guy is our first-round pick this year, and
that is cool.
That is really cool to me, and I think that having somebody homegrown, hopefully he can one day play at Wrigley, and we'll have a homegrown center fielder or an outfielder, whatever they want to do with him. So pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm a preacher's kid, so here's what preachers say at the end of services. Is all hearts and minds clear?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
You got anything to add or take away? I don't either.
A lot of fun, man. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe our wives will watch this. I don't know. It would be 2 fans that we got of this podcast or whatever we call it. But, hey, if there's one person that watches it.
Yeah, my wife won't have a clue what we're talking about. And yours will be hating every minute because she's a White Sox fan.
Yeah, so maybe we get 0 views, but this was a lot of fun.
It was fun. We'll have to maybe next couple of days we'll do it again. Going to do the Yankees next, so I'll kind of be in the hot seat a little bit, but we'll definitely get back at it again.
Awesome, David. It's been a lot of fun, buddy.
All right, buddy. See ya.
We'll see everybody out there that may be possibly watching later too. Thank you for tuning in to episode 1 of Frenemies. See you guys.